of motivation, how to kill the game in your life and recovery. Enjoy the show and keep living Recovered on Purpose.
The black represents the darkness from which we came. The white represents the light in which we now live. And the red represents the passion it takes to live Recovered on Purpose.
Good morning, everyone. Thank God it's Monday. We have a new week. It's a new you, and we have a new opportunity to live the life that we always wanted to live. We are in recovery. We are doing the deal. And today we're talking about the 3 principles of motivation, how to get yourself up, how to achieve those dreams, and what actually happens inside the body during this time. Go ahead and drop in the comments if you're watching this live, where you're coming in from, your clean and sober dates. We always love to celebrate clean and sober time. And let me know where you're coming in from. And if you're watching the replay, let me know. So first off, what exactly is motivation? Motivation is identifying the specific why of why you want to do something. Identifying that, and sometimes it can be external or internal. And that's the difference between extrinsic and intrinsic motivation. So sometimes we have an internal desire to do something, to be fulfilled, to have a certain kind of feeling, to feel accomplished, to feel achieved, or to feel joy, happy, freedom, that kind of stuff. Then there's extrinsic motivation where we want that car, we want that person to see us a certain way, something that comes from outside of us, okay? And motivation is driven. It's driven by these specific whys, these specific internal or external rewards. Something that our mind actually sees as giving us a release of the good feeling dopamine, the serotonin, the things that happen in our brain. And we used to have to use this type of motivation to survive. Like this actual, this system, the way that we think was originally, I want you to think about, you're way back in the day, and you're standing there and there's a tree over there with an apple on it, and you're hungry. Your motivation right there is a desire, an extrinsic motivation to get that apple in order to eat it, to taste the juiciness, to fill your stomach, to get the nutrients and things. And your mind first has to make the decision to walk over and get that apple. It first has to imagine, it has to sense the way that it's going to feel when it has that apple, the way it's going to taste when it eats that apple. And so you take that first step and you start walking over there, And before we were communicating with each other and everything, we were driven by these internal and external motivations, all driven by the why of why we were doing something. And that's what we're going to talk about today, and being able to activate this stuff within ourselves to go after the dreams, the goals, and the life that we really want in recovery. So the reward system and what we're really looking for, it's basically driven by biological needs, emotional wants, or social desires. And biological needs are going to be things like food, sex, things like that, things that our body says that we need: air, water. If you haven't taken a drink of water in a day and you've been walking in the desert and you see a clean river over there, you're going to be pretty excited inside, pretty motivated to take everything necessary to get to that river over there. So how do we activate that in ourselves now? How do we activate that same part of the brain to get ourselves to do these things that we want to do? Then there's emotional wants. Some of us, if you want to feel happy, feel joyful, feel accomplished, feel like you are succeeding, these emotional desires, these emotional wants, this is a really strong motivating factor. And a lot of you have these motivations, these desires. I've talked to quite a few of you that want to do addiction counseling. Now, you want to get clear, really clear on why you want to do this thing. If it's addiction counseling, if it's write a book, if it's share your story, if it's you want to get a new career, you want to get really clear on the why of it. Is it because it would suit a biological need? Probably not. Is it an emotional need? Do you want to feel the way it feels to help someone else? Do you want to feel that excitement of somebody else getting sober because of your teaching? And do you want to have those emotional needs met where it's like security? You feel like you have a secure job and you want to feel secure. And then there's the social desires. Social desires are a really strong external, and it's intrinsic also, because if you have the desire for your parents to feel proud of you because you were in addiction for so long, and now, hey, I went to school, I got this certification, and now I'm actually helping addicts every single day as my profession. That's a social desire. You want to help people. You want people to see what you're doing. You want to feel that status almost of doing this thing. And there's nothing wrong with this. There's nothing wrong with having a social desire to make change and for people to see you changing and to be that inspiration. That's a lot of what I do. A lot of what I do has to do with social desires, because everything, when I'm living my life in recovery, what I do, the steps that I take, the things that I do it in order to be a model of what recovery could be like, an inspiration for kids out there that are suffering an addiction, or people out there that are suffering an addiction that don't know what recovery is like. A lot of what I do is I want to be an example of what's possible. I was homeless. I was addicted to IV drugs just 5 years ago. 5 years ago. And my life has completely changed. A lot of my desires are to be that example and to show addicts out there suffering that it is possible. So, in identifying your why really increases your motivation to do something. So you really want to identify, if you're thinking about something that you want to do and you haven't quite taken the steps to do it yet, you haven't taken that first step, you've been thinking about it for a while. Yeah, I want to do it. And here's another thing. I want you to imagine that thing right now that you want to do, that thing that you have been thinking about for a while, that you want to do, but you'll do it later. I want you to imagine yourself in 2 years looking back on this moment and wishing you would have started now. That's 2 years that are going to go down the drain, that you never get back, and you still have that goal, that dream, that aspiration that you want to do. So it's important that we identify the why of why it is that we want to do this and write it out. Write down your why. Get clear on why you want to do something. And also, I just realized this as I'm doing this, but in the free relapse prevention worksheet I made that's on the Recovered on Purpose website, I actually go through how to create a strong why statement for yourself. So now we're going to talk about the 3 principles to killing the game of motivation, killing the game of life, killing the game of recovery. Before this, I'm going to hop in the comments. I see there's a bunch of people commenting. What's up, Wendy? Good to see you. Good to see you. Have to go to group, but I have asked people to support you. Love you, Mary. 61022. Let's go. Good morning, Melinda. Good to see you, Melinda. I get done at 2. I will watch then. Awesome, Mary. Awesome. Coming in from North Carolina. What's up, Angie? Good to see you. I'm dating a juicy orange. Sounds good. Good morning, Wisconsin. What's up, Ruth? What's going on here? We're talking about motivation. We're talking about motivation in recovery. Can't I ask you what your addiction is? Can I ask you what your addiction is? My addiction was heroin, meth, crack. It was basically more. Anything you got? Let me get some more. Good morning, everybody. Be the person who gives others hope. Yes, exactly. That's a social desire, and it's a good one. It's a really good one. There's nothing wrong with that. People look at, you don't want to, it's not fear of man. It's not the same thing as like wondering what they're going to think about you, but it's more so you want to be an example, to spread hope, to spread inspiration, to help others. And it's a strong place to come from. What's up, Dawn? Good to see you, Dawn. Jackie, good morning. Sheila, good morning. Nashville in the house. Kelly, what's up? Good morning. Good to see you. All right, so the 3 principles to killing the game. And if you're just coming on, make sure that you watch the replay. This is a short episode of the beginning, because we actually talk about motivation and where it actually comes from, externally, internally, and the different places that you can actually find it. So the first principle is activation. We have to activate ourselves in order to begin the motivation process. There's motivation and momentum are two in the same thing. And in order to start momentum, we have to start taking action. We have to take that first step. We have to apply to school to get that certification. We have to go to the gym and get a membership. We have to, make a meal plan. We have to write down the meal plan. Whatever it is, we have to start that activation with action. And that's where it comes from. Activation is action. So whatever you're thinking about doing, you've got to find out why it is that you want to do it, like we were talking about before. If it's social, emotional, or biological needs that you want to meet with it, and write down exactly what it is. And then you have to find out what the exact steps are that you have to take in order to get there. And by becoming clear on this path, your mind will actually be able to begin feeling as if you're there already. Because you can have all these thoughts about, I want to be an addictions counselor. I want to, lose 10 pounds. I want these things. But the thing is when you start the activation process, when you start taking action and you make a clear step plan to get there, and your mind sees that clear step plan, you'll start feeling as if you're there because you notice that you can actually get there. It's the same as we were talking about earlier with the guy that doesn't have language yet, and he's standing there and there's a tree 100 yards off and there's an apple there. And he's imagining, he's like, I need that apple. I need to go eat. I start feeling that juiciness because he can see the path to get there is I take these steps 100 yards. I climb the tree. I pull down the apple and I eat it. And he sees that step and he can feel that. He can motivate himself to start walking over there. And it's a simple example, but it's the same for anything that we're doing. We want to become clear on the why we're doing it. And then we have to become clear on the path. And then we have to start the activation, which is just action. Now, the second principle is intensity. So intensity is going to be something that, you will notice during the path and during the activation process. And intensity is the degree of action you must take in order to accomplish the why, in order to accomplish what you really want to have done. The intensity that you have to take the action at. So, for example, let's say someone in school, some kid in school he just gets really, really easy A's on all of his tests. He doesn't have to study. He doesn't have to do the homework, things like that. And he just is able to go into school. He takes the test and he gets an A on it. And there's this other student that the whole time they're having to work. They're having to do, homework. They're having to read. They're having to learn all this stuff. And then they get the same grade. They have the same outcome. Now, the reward process of the one that is actually doing the work, the one that is working hard on this stuff and then getting that grade, the reward is actually much, much greater. So the level of intensity that you have to do in order to accomplish your why, the level of work you have to put in is going to make the reward greater at the end of it. Because if you know that, for instance, I keep going back to the addictions counselor because I know so many of you out there want to do this. The amount of work that you have to do in order to get that position, the reward in that position will be much greater because you know how much school you had to do. You know how much you had to sacrifice in finances in order to afford the school. You know how much time you had to sacrifice with friends in order to do the homework and things like that. During that process, you can recognize that this is all going to equal a reward at the end. And if you're recognizing that reward at the end of the tunnel, the process is actually where a lot of the dopamine and serotonin and good feeling processes come in. If we recognize that the process is just as rewarding as the reward. And I can tell you from an example for me, when I wrote and published my book, I had this goal. I had to publish it on November 6, 2019. I had to, because it was my 2 years clean and sober. And I just felt that God told me to do this. And I had 5 weeks to do it. And I had all these thoughts and I had this huge reward in my head of publishing it on my 2 years clean and sober. I'm going to help so many people with it. And other people are going to be inspired to tell their stories and things like that. And while I'm sitting there and I'm doing this process, I'm putting my phone away and I'm working hard, like hours and hours and hours a day, writing and editing and doing all this stuff. And looking back, like after it actually went out, I got #1 bestseller. That was a very fleeting reward. It was a very fleeting reward. It didn't last very long where I was like, oh my gosh, it feels so good. I'm an author. I'm a best-selling author, all this stuff. The reward of that didn't even come close to the reward of doing the process, doing the work, sacrificing what I had to sacrifice in order to make that thing happen. So whatever your path is, make sure you're enjoying the process and become aware that the intensity that you put into it is the reward you're going to get out of it. And you're not seeking only the reward at the end of the tunnel. The entire process is rewarding. Okay. And the third principle is persistence. Persistence is key to achieving anything in life. Persistence is when, you have school for your addictions counselor license on a Wednesday, and you wake up and you want to sleep more. You don't feel like getting up. And the persistence says, no, this is what we do. We get up, we go to school, no matter how I'm feeling in this moment, because I know that there's addicts out there suffering right now, that if I don't learn this stuff, if I don't get this certification, they're not going to find recovery. They're not going to find joy in their recovery. So we get up and we go do it no matter how we feel. Anything worth achieving in life will take time. And we had so long in our life that we were able to reward ourselves like this, like with dopamine, with getting high. We were able to go to the dealer, get dope, use the dope, and get high. So we have to rewire our brain to shut that part out. The amount of time that it can take to actually accomplish something that gives you real, lasting, good, joyful, happy feelings in life, it's a time, it's a process. It's a process to do it. And Gary Vee said something that really hit me. And he was talking about businesses, and every single business he would rather. And he never looks at startups that all of a sudden started and 2 years later, they're multi-million-dollar companies. He doesn't look at those ones. He looks at the ones to invest in. He looks at the ones that have had a persistent track record for years and years and years of growth, going like this. Because when you learn that it's not about the destination that you're going to, but it's about your persistence in life, the why you're living the way that you're living now. That's when you can trust yourself. Other people can trust you because you're not counting on external things in order to get you to get up and do what you need to do. I love you guys so much. Have an incredible, incredible week. I hope this helped. And if there's something that you want to do, let me know in the comments. And I'm going to close with a couple announcements, and then we will see you guys on Wednesday morning for Bringing the Word. Hey family, I have a couple quick announcements for you. First, if you didn't know, Recovered on Purpose is a 501c3 nonprofit with a mission statement to equip and empower addicts in recovery to share their stories with those suffering, to encourage and help addicts recover, and to share their experiences in the school system to deter the future generations from going down the path of addiction. We are currently looking for people who are interested in volunteering to help this mission move forward, and if you love this mission and the community and want to get behind it, send a message to the Facebook page to set up an interview with me. Also, some of you saw some of the graduates of the Recovery Speaker course being certified and getting paid to speak, as well as becoming best-selling authors. The course is open for enrollment again, and if you want to add impact and income to telling your story, learning directly from me, go to recoveredonpurpose.com after the show to book a one-time call with me so I can hear your story and see if you would fit in this new group of students. Right now, I want you to share this episode with your community to help spread the message of hope and recovery to those in need. I love you, enjoy the rest of the show, and keep living Recovered on